Hey, and welcome to the Neurodivergent Musician Podcast, where I explore the world of neurodiversity and musicianship. I'm your host, John Hart, and today I will be joined by Bloom De Wilde, who is an award-winning, multi-platinum selling artist, singer-songwriter, producer, poet, visual artist, and coach. In this episode, we talk about synesthesia, but we do dive into other things like every guest episode. Let's dive into that conversation. Hey Bloom, how you doing?
Hello, I'm good.
Thank you so much for coming on to the Neurodivergent Musician Podcast. So instead of me introducing you, because we've got to know each other for the last, I think it's year and maybe a year and a half or a year and a bit with the Creative Recharge, could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I always find that tricky. Who am I?
It's not. Don't worry, it's not an elevator pitch or anything like that either.
But it's funny because yesterday I was like puzzling with that because I had to make a really short one, a description for my TikTok account, which I decided to
try and put it in 140 characters or whatever.
Yeah, that is 80 characters. And then I came to the conclusion that I'm a synesthetic kaleidocosmic polymath.
Amazing. Fantastic. So what's happening in the world of Bloom at the moment?
Well, lots at the same time. So I'm releasing my album and 2 singles before that. So tomorrow I have a video shoot, and other than that, I'm going to be Bloom. It's going to be completely improvised because sometimes I just have to improvise. Yeah. And so I've been doing videos for all of these tracks. So I'm preparing for the release. I'm doing lots of coaching and some programs as well. And I play in a gamelan orchestra as well, which is traditional Indonesian music. I had my first play with that particular group, which is, I think that's the coolest gamelan group outside of Indonesia, and I'm in it, so this is awesome. Then I'm writing lots of stuff. I started writing a new album again. I was trying to stop myself from doing that for a while, but it's been unleashed. That's happening, and I've got at least 2 other music projects that are kind of lining up to be explored. And one of them is sort of my, whenever I got stuck with any creative activity, I like to just swap to another one and sometimes create alter egos, so that, if I take myself too seriously for one project, I can do the exact opposite for something else. So for the past 20 years, I had this character which didn't begin as a character. I was just collecting sounds as an obsession, and then all around the house, cats and people sneezing and people practicing trumpets and all the pots and pans, and then finding out what notes they were and what harmonies, and so I have this large folder of sounds, and I called the folder Homo Sapiens because they're home samples but made by a human being, homemade home samples. So Homo Sapiens, and I, for the past 20 years, I've been making experimental instrumental dance music with those sounds, and then I realized, over the years, it's grown to be quite a body of work. So I did a gig with that last year, which was fun because I did like a DJ set with improvised solos and spoken word on top of it.
Amazing. Wow. So I mean, that's just, I suppose, just it just allows you also to explore different different flavors, different mediums, different ways of because we're not just linear, we're not just one dimensional. You know, our music can be, you know, multi-dimensional things as well, but that just sounds so sort of exploration. And
it's funny that you
yeah.
sorry.
No, it's fine, keep going.
No, it's like you said non-linear, but it's funny because my album, not for the Inverted Mirror project, but my album is called The Circular Being. So it's it is about that. Yeah, we're definitely not. I am not a linear being.
And that ties in because I think when I was putting these podcast episodes together, I loosely try and go, well, what subject and what person and where can this link up and who can I talk to? But I also read, and you know, and I think we've spoken about it, that you have synesthesia, right?
Oh yes.
And how long have you known you've had synesthesia?
Well, I think I was 16 or 17, and I started playing with other musicians and have a band. I had a friend at the time, and I lived in a bathroom. Of course, as you do. At 16, I met my first universe friend. So we were living in this space while doing it up. And then I started playing with other musicians. Now, this friend also was still my friend, also has synesthesia. So that was my first person to make music with. And I thought, oh, you see, everybody thinks like that. And then I started working with other musicians, and they were like, I would be like, yeah, can you play that pink fluffy sound with that notes, the yellow notes, you know, with that, and that blue one with the raspy texture. And they were looking at me like, what do you mean? You know, and I started to realize that, because before that I was quite I was a super geek in high school and quite, you know, in my own bubble, and I was hanging out with dead poets more than with my peers. So I didn't have much experience with, you know, really collaborations in that sense. So it was quite a revelation to me to realize, oh, doesn't everybody experience the world like that? So yeah, slowly I came to realize that, oh, okay, this is not everybody's reality. And there's so many more of them. This is fascinating.
And you had obviously how would you explain it to someone who doesn't know what synesthesia is in your way? Because everyone might have a distinctive way. Obviously there's terminology and things online that you can kind of research it, but having a lived experience of it, I think sometimes is one of those where, like you've just said, but in a way of you obviously bouncing off of bandmates and then getting to a point where did you know what that was? Did you know what it was called at that time? Or did you just kind of, you were just seeing colors and things?
Yeah, but it's quite extensive. Some people have just the colors and the sounds, but I have it with numbers, people, textures, light intensities. What music evokes a lot of them, but also the sound of someone's voice or a word. Even I heard lights once as well. Like sometimes this happens. So it's basically all the senses are intertwined, and each experience, sensory experience, evokes almost like a whole universe of its own in my inner world. So it's not exactly, I don't literally see it with my eyes, but I hear the colors. Let's say it that way. I hear them. I hear the shapes, or I see them also. But it's it's a rich sensory experience, which a one song can literally evoke a whole universe. It's very 3D, and it's quite kaleidoscopic. Sometimes it can lead to a complete sensory overload, such as when I walk on a market, for example, because people also, they all have, I don't just see a person, but there's a whole burst of information that comes with, interacting with a person. And then, on the market, my olfactory system is quite well developed, which is the one I wish I could turn down sometimes, because when I walk in the market and I have people and then smells, and then the market in front of my house has like the triangle of doom. At some point there's cheese, fish, and meat. Oh no, cheese, fish, and nuts. And it's really narrow. So it's like people, cheese, fish, nuts. And then I go in like, oh no, it's like a whole kaleidoscope of information enters my brain at once. And I sometimes then have a sort of panic attack. You're like, I have to leave now. But I learned to deal with that a bit better, although it's not always as effective. Maybe sometimes too
It's
much.
interesting because through my education of this and kind of the neurodivergent brain and we've gone into it, and I think we've spoken a little bit within the creative recharges, which we can go through. We'll talk about in this episode, because they've been life-changing for me. But there is a sense, and it's interesting how you've bounced off with me in like 2 different events within the space of a year. But I've always seen on a musical front that there's a lot of a world that can see and focus in mono. Everything's mono, so they can shut everything out. But I as soon as you mentioned the marketplace, I was just like, as soon as I walk down, everything's in stereo, everything's in light. It feels like it's just surround sound, stereo. But that is sounds and smells. I can't imagine also then there'll be the colors on top of that as well. Does I don't know, does the colors start to play into the sounds and the senses as well? Is that all going on? Is it just kind of one big mixing bowl, but within like stereo going round? Because I know how overwhelming that is. I went to an autism friendly board game meeting the other night, but you had to go through this. It's called The Light, and you have to go through this cinema thing, and then they've got this arcade going on and this and stuff to be able to get to this sensory room. So I was like, I had to go and enter. It's like the old days of like Toys R Us, where you're like, I want to go and buy the toy, but I've got to go through the path of doom where they try and sell you every single thing until you have to go and get to the toy. You're like trying to take your child through this the tunnel of doom, so they don't see all the little things that are on sale, just to go and get the thing. And this reminded me of this. I was like, do I have to walk through this whole arcade with sensory needs to be able to get to a sensory friendly room? It was just like, this is so backward. But that I can imagine is the same when we have a marketplace, but the shop that I need to get to is on the other side of the marketplace. And I'm like, okay. And you don't realize you have to almost, right, do I have my coping mechanism? Do I have this? I almost have to MOT and check. You have to check yourself over. Do I have my noise cancelling headphones? Do I have this and stuff do you have to wear any glasses at all, sunglasses, when you're going at specific things, or to be able to
Yeah,
counteract colors?
I don't really like things on my face. This is also something, I don't know if you do that. I notice more people have this. When I have sunglasses on and I speak to a person, and then if I want to hear them, I have to take my glasses off, even though I can totally hear, but there's something about, no, I can't have a conversation with sunglasses on. That's not right. But actually, I've got something that is very good, which is not wearing glasses, because actually I should be wearing glasses. I should be bespectacled according to eye tests, and I just don't, because I can see everything a bit blurry after like an arm's length. Everything becomes a bit more soft, and I notice that if I do wear my glasses, which I only do for driving, otherwise I miss all the exits, but if I do wear them in the street, it's like, oh my gosh, that's too much. I do not need all this information. So not wearing glasses is a very good way of softening. And then I learned some tricks to turn everything down, but the olfactory one is the most tricky to turn down. But for example, I used to find traveling on the tube very intense as well, and I had to leave several times and just walk through London for hours because it was like I could not be in this underground overload of sounds, smells, sights, everything, light, intense.
How many people there? Oh no, I remember it.
Yeah, it's like so Nick actually taught me something beautiful, that it's like, I see like a big mixing table with the buttons are big in my mind, and I can just turn them all down. It's like, oh, like turn down the sounds, turn down this helps. The smell, not so much though. Smell is,
or especially if you've got that with the triangle of doom, and you're kind of like, how do you go in the middle of that? That's just going to be, that's overwhelming for anyone who doesn't have kind of, sort of, I don't know, the sensory sort of side of it with smell. But I mean, how does it play out every day throughout the day, or is there any times that you don't notice the synesthesia, or is it constantly there?
well, I guess I don't notice it because it is constantly there.
Yeah,
It's just my reality. And it's mostly a beautiful thing. Yeah, I do like it. I am grateful for it, because when I graduated from art school, and to write a thesis, so I wrote it about synesthesia, and I spoke to a lot of people there. I realized that I know quite a few people that have it too. So that's cool. Like, and in different forms, and we can be like, oh, so what's number 2 for you? For me, 2 is yellow. 2 is yellow. But also realize that there are so many different brains, so many different ways of processing the senses. And isn't it awesome that actually everyone's reality is completely unique to them? There's no one that perceives the world like you do. And there's also no real way of checking and this is called qualia. You may have heard of it, but if I have something that I call red, and you have something that you call red too, but we don't know if we perceive it in the same way. And it's very difficult to check if we do. And when we see something completely different, which connects to the coaching, because it is that, it is a reflection of your inner world, how you perceive the world. It's unique, and it's created by you from within. The outside reality is not absolute as such, because we all perceive that reality completely different.
And how long? Because how long have you been coaching now?
That's a year and a bit more than a year and a half now. Yeah.
And how have you found that journey? Obviously, with you've been a music artist for how long?
30 years.
And I will put your website, because you get to see all the wonderful things you've done and things as well. But how is that? And this is interesting with a music artist journey and things, because it connects. You could probably relate. It connects the heart and soul, without a doubt. It's what it started off as a hobby, and then it becomes a career, and then you're having to try and navigate all those things, as we're doing at the moment. We're putting videos and things as well, but then it kind of can then steer off to other avenues. And how did you move into coaching, and then sort of still weave that with your music artistry? And it feels like spinning plates, but it doesn't. It's like a synergy that starts to happen. Has it all synergized, or does it all feel like a kaleidoscope, like we were talking? Does it feel like separate things? Don't know.
No, it's very much the same thing. When I was younger, I saw things like different things, because I would be doing art and music, and more and more these are just the same thing. I realized they were always the same thing, and I realized that they're all expressions of the same thing, whether I draw or I write or I coach or I make music or a video. It doesn't matter, because it's the same thing. It's the same journey, and working with people one-to-one, it's basically the same thing as when I write music, because it's all about the same thing. It's all about
is it about the creation? There's the creation sort of side of it, or more of the I can't how do you explain what? Because there's listening to music, but then there's creating music, feeling music, like the energy that maybe is it the same? There's an energy that channels through music, through art, through coaching, through, but like there's it's the same sort of, what is that energy? What is that
that's
energy?
the formless coming into form, and that's what all my music is always about. It's that play of like, and that's these realities that occur at the same time. It's our human form and experience, and at the same time it's our being of the universe itself. Like, we're all the universe personified, having a human experience and creating anything. Like, before, something doesn't exist, and then suddenly it exists. We do this with tangible objects, but not only with language, with, we create whole concepts that you cannot put in a wheelbarrow. And I love that. And it's all made up, because we made up everything, and we made up reality also. And I like to remind myself of that, because sometimes when we forget that, things can become really serious and heavy sometimes, right? And we can start limiting ourselves and think, oh, I cannot do this, or oh, I'm too this or too that, but it's all made up by, by ourselves. And that's the beauty. And I love through coaching to help people find that infinite, playful, creative existence, because we are all creative. We're continuously creating. You don't have to create a painting or a piece of music to create. Create all the time, every moment of the day.
It reminds me of always this feeling. I know I only read it recently, so you can, like you said, there's things that can go through times where you're like, this is super hard, and I can dwell on the why is this happening? Why is this? Why did this happen? Did it? Why? Or, well, what can I use? What can I do from this? What can I use? What can I? Where? I don't know. There seems to be another creative thing that recently I've gone through, and I'm still going through. I'm like, but what can I learn from this? What's the opportunity? What's the creation? So it's instead of the why and going back and trying to decipher and be a detective of figuring out where things might have gone wrong or things as well. It's now okay, well, there could be a why is this going on right now, but it's more of the, well, how can I use this? What can I do with this? What can I do with this energy? And that just feels another way of exploration and improvisation and play. Just create with, it could be a dark thing, but it's just like a piece of Play-Doh or whatever it is, a piece of clay that you're just kind of, okay, well, it's a little bit stodgy and it's a little whatever it is, but I can mold it into something. And that kind of nicely transitions into the creative recharge, because that's kind of something that was started with an idea and a conversation, right?
Yeah, actually, from a challenging, seemingly challenging situation.
Right.
Because, my contract of my flat ended and I didn't find a place in time. So I had to put all my stuff in storage. I have 2 young children, and I was like, oh no, this is challenging. What's going to happen? I felt, should I panic or should I? What's going on here? I felt like being offered as a sense of panic. Like, would you like some panic and anxiety with that today? And I'm like, no, actually, I feel that everything is as it should be. And what is the message here? And then I asked Nick, it's like, I was having, at some point, I did accept some anxiety with my coffee. I was like, okay, I feel really anxious now. And he asked me this, given the situation, what would you like to create? And he also asked me, what could you be doing that would change everything that you know how to do, but you're not doing now? And that immediately, that sparked a vision. And that's the thing, it's rather than going in why, which is actually, I'm on a quest to eliminate that question from my being, because I realized why is it's not a very constructive way, because that is asking for trouble. Why? However, what would you like to create given the situation? Immediately, something pops up. And for me, this was a vision of, and it seemed so unrelated as well. I thought, share how to create creativity with amazing people. And I saw this flash of like, a group setting and in a beautiful environment, doing really deep work with really amazing people. And I thought, that was very alien to me, right? Because I'd never, apart from being a band leader, I've never spoken to a group of people. In fact, I still suffered from fear of public speaking at the time, because I loved being on stage always. That's never been an issue. Never had stage fright. No matter how many people, helps that I can't really see them properly without my glasses. 10,000 people, just a blur. But I never had that issue. But speaking in a small group, raising my hands and saying, I want to say something, that was very scary at the time. So I was like, I have no idea how this is going to happen. And yet I'm going to surrender to it and see what happens if I do, if I allow this to happen. And well, now we're running the third one. It's not even this year. It's in May, it's 2025, but we're already speaking to lots of people. Half of the places have gone already. So,
and it's, I mean, being on the first two, and it's interesting to think it was June 2023. I think that feels like a lifetime ago. That first one feels like a lifetime, with the amount of because I can imagine your vision as well. Obviously you're coming as a coach and speaking things as well, but you and Nick are also participants of, like, I feel like you're a coach, but as soon as you're immersed in it and things as well, there's like this kind of I imagine a blurred line, because you're immersed into the whole experience as well. Because a coach, or I think sometimes you can have a bit of disconnect, or like a tutor, or like a musician, we can have a hat where we're like, okay, I'm in my musician hat now I can go on stage and I can do these things as well. And that the environment that we created and we have with the Creative Recharge, which is a beautiful environment, Ferret Farms, just stunning. And I remember going there for the first time, and I'm not a coach, I'm not anything. I feel I came in for a different door to what others did, and which was fine. And I thought it was a music thing, and it wasn't. And I was like pleasantly surprised. After the first day, I was like, I didn't know what I was joining. But by the time, I hadn't realized, when you look at the grand scheme of our life and the way the moving parts play out, and this is the just observation and things as well, how stepping back and going, oh my goodness, how important that was for me to step into with regards to what happened in the last few years, and that sort of particular point of going in super fast, like a supersonic, and ground, like so many people in my life had said to ground or to do this or things as well, but to actually go in and have the whole experience. But then it just carried on with the relationships that we built around it, the connections, the other resources and things. And it hasn't stopped. Even though we go through ups and downs, we go through pits and troughs. I think what you were saying about taking out the why, that's been my recent revelation as well. It's like, which is, I'm glad we kind of sync with that, because I'm like, if I dwell in the why all the time, then I'm in this constant past narrative and storytelling of like, why would that happen? Why is this happening to me? Victim mentality. Like, no, that's not when I'm in creative mode. I'm not in creative mode if I'm in the why all the time. I'm not a detective. I didn't sign up to be a detective. I don't have that logical brain. Like, why, John, are you going? Maybe that's a creation for myself and language creation, but I do have logic. But I know that my creativity is a ton stronger. So I sort of feel, why stay in logic of why, and just stay in the what, which is creativity. And that's my recent revelation. But going through two of these creative recharges, And the second one is so interesting because obviously there was some people who it was their first time as well, but even we had conversations with it. Just the change that I felt, but also the change that I noticed other people saw in me, in just the space of 1 year. It's remarkable, and I love the fact that your vision of where you wanted this to go and things as well. But I don't know, have you been surprised in any way of how things have, I don't know, not just the creative recharge itself, but seeing development in participants and things as well, seeing their journeys, seeing your journey play out?
Mm.
That's a
No,
lot.
that's
That was a lot of info I said there. So yeah,
yeah.
I went off on one. Sorry, I was
No,
excited.
no, I found it very moving. Yeah, I really saw that in you when you showed up that first year, and then that second year. It was like, yes, and layers removed. Seeing the realest, truest you there. And taking space for being that. Um, and I just found it so moving. Also, the way you capture it then in music and poem. Yeah, I was really struck by that. Because the first year you drove in like a Ferrari, it was like,
I was like a child, literally walking in, just like the toddler, like and then I pulled it down, and I remember the accelerator and things. But I think what I like now is I've got dials, I've got controls, like you were saying, like the mixing board, and I'm like, I can dial up this childlike energy, which is what's coming out now when I get excited, but I can dial it back down and then pull up the slowed version at the same time. And I never had that. I never had that mixing board before. I never knew that existed, and I could play with these controls. So when I'm in creative mode, I'm like, well, no, I'm going to dial up the childlike energy and just go into play. And then when I'm with my children, or that, I can have that or that. And that's just having that visualization. I think you were saying as well with Nick, when you're out in places, for our brain, for our brains, and to know, okay, there's so much going on, so much information, processing it, and to be able to just try and contain it, but not feel constrained or restricted. It's just washing through me. I think you alluded to light, actually. I was almost like, I didn't have a torchlight when I was talking to everybody. I had like a scatter light, and it was just going all the time. But I felt like the second year, which it felt like all that light was going out, but it was coming back in, and then it was allowed me to channel in one light at a time. But that took from not just one recharge. It was like, I have to do, like, these things are in the diary, because they are, and I've only done 2 of them, but I'm like, this is an essential part of self growth, personal development, connection, groundedness. It was like a human MOT. I go in and I'm like, right, I cleanse myself over those 4 days, and really go and take stock. It's almost at the middle of the year as well, where you go, okay, I'm ready for the second half, and then the next bit. And that is so wonderful that, I remember you talking about, it was either the postcard or the photograph you had in your head of what it was going to look like. And you said, the community, and how that's inspired me of like, okay, actually, that's manifesting in a way where you can go through what you went through, and you could have seen, like I said, there was anxiety and things as well, but what can you create from these moments that some people can call a crisis, some people can call a spiral or struggle and things as well, but to turn it on its head and go, this is what you're going to create out of it, And I mean, we're going into into the third year, how it's going to affect other people's lives. And, you know, it's an extraordinary thing. So, and the conversations I still have with the participants and stuff, and how warmly we talk about 4 days in a year, only 4 days in a year. But those 4 days are just, it's more than any holiday memory, you know, of a holiday or whatever it is, or stuff I've ever had in my life. So I'm incredibly grateful for them.
Me too. It's like, it's like you said, for me, even though I'm a facilitator, there's no hat in that sense, because you show up open, in nakedness of being, you know, completely open-hearted. And for me, it was a massive revelation and learning process as well that transformed me. Because, you know, I have no issue with public speaking, by the way, anymore. None whatsoever.
Fantastic.
When it used to be a sensation of there's a life-threatening situation here, right? The body would react as such, and that's gone. And that doesn't mean that insecurities and fears do not show up. And I found that every time, like the bullshit button, I realized that I had, like, Nick brought this button, but then I realized that in the days before we were going, one day I had my shit goggles on. Yeah, so I was like, oh no, I don't know what I'm doing. I am shit, basically. And everything that I saw was shit because I was wearing my shit goggles. But then there was the bullshit button, seeing that all that bullshit was bullshit. So again, and I felt that, let's create a game with that, of the bullshit button game, which was, I love creating games, especially around seemingly challenging situations. And did you notice that wherever you go into Y mode rather than in creative mode, the thing just keeps coming back in some other form? Right? It's if it can't be transformed, then it will just return to your doorstep. Same, but
I don't know what does Y achieve in regards to, I mean, it can open up and you can have a more understand, maybe that why, you know, what, no, actually, what is going on underneath? That is the creative thing. Why that's happening, you're right. And it can go into a cycle, constant cycle, that is just like, where am I going? I'm just on a hamster wheel. This way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to be on a hamster wheel. I don't want to ruminate either, because I know my brain will ruminate and stay. It's in a kind of a default mode of emotional rumination, and can get dysregulation or stuff as well. I'm like, well, I'm caught in this, and I can't see it until I try and, you know, physically take myself above, or see it as the cinema screen, as we were saying in the creative recharge, and I can sit in the seats and just watch it play out. And that I love the when Nick brought out the Buddha, and there was talking about, you know, the ego and dying up, and you can either be in the snow or you can be on the outside of it. And those concepts and those ideas, it's interesting, like how we have our own processing and filtering system, and how that felt like oh, that's interesting, you know, it's kind of like a what, but until it's like, it felt like a tool or a doing thing, and then it takes time to then become a being thing, where, right, hang on a minute, am I in the middle of the snow right now, or should I take myself out of the snow? And that is, I've started to see that slowly play out in life, but it took some time from the recharge to really realize some of these things. And it's like the why. I guarantee I'll go into default mode and start going into why, but it's the awareness. And I've been playing with this awareness of when we have conflict, or when whatever is going on. It can be very reactive, the awareness, but I'm like, oh, okay, I've caught it afterwards. Now I've got to try and catch it whilst I'm during. And then the biggest one is I've got to try and catch it proactively. Okay, I'm entering, like you said, I'm entering into the triangle of smells of the market and things. You could have gone through that and then gone, oh, do you know what? You probably have. I'm not going to go through that triangle again. And then keep doing that. And then you'll be during it and you're like, actually, I'm in the middle of the triangle now. No, I'll figure it out. But what you've done now is proactively gone, that's the triangle. I'm not going to enter into the triangle today and stuff. And I think it's all of that. That's just constant awareness on that front, on how it starts to embed into your life and being and all these and these other things and concepts. But the why definitely can be just a constant rumination, which I used to play around with loads, but then just get myself all tangled up. So very much into the what. So with going forward, obviously new albums coming out in October, Creative Recharge 3 next year. And other things you got, so singles and videos,
Yeah.
coaching, obviously there's
Yeah.
loads.
Yeah. I've been thinking of doing some other programs as well, some little online things that I would love to share. So
Amazing.
I realized, yeah, I love that. I love creating that space and holding the space. And it just if you put some people together that show up with open hearts and minds, there is guaranteed magic happening. You don't have to do anything, just have to bring them together and know that, and create that space to be safe so everyone can show up. You know, with this same openness and
The open mind
willingness to
kind of,
share.
yeah.
Like, that's magic. That's the biggest part of it, is that the fact that everybody shows up so, yeah, I don't know a better word, but naked in being, you know, with so for everyone it is safe. There's no egos. The ego is left by the door. There's no competitions or people acting in a way, or I feel that that's all left by the door, and there's people that show up with loving curiosity. And so I did notice if one person goes through a revelation, a breakthrough, that sets in motion this chain of other people going through theirs. Like willingness to go somewhere together in that way. It's like everybody has each other's back. And also through, I see it like a prism, like, and every person, you know, shining the light through from a different angle, and yet all pointing to the same thing, the same truth. And I found that so moving, so deeply connecting. So it makes me so grateful to be a human being having a human experience, to feel so connected to people, so safe with them, so truthful, so lovingly curious. And yeah, and
It's and how that's playing out in day-to-day life. I've found myself um sending messages and connect. So when there's something comes up, it could be anything. It's interesting now that there are people from the Creative Recharge that are my first go-tos to be able to open up to. If I'm talking about an idea, if I'm talking about what's going on maybe in personal life or like difficulties and things as well. And I think it's one, we had that connection within both Creative Recharges, but there's this, like you said, open-minded growth mindset and this kind of energy and this real kind of, well, everything about me. I think I remember saying I turned up and I want to just leave all my hats at the door so we could just go in there completely transparent and just like and just say everything. And I think because of that, just in the space of 4 days, you've got comrades and you've got people and you've got unity for life, where you go in and now on a day-to-day life, I still love my family and still love some of my friends to bits and things as well. But there's just a realization that I'm like, well, these people that I connected with here are just so unbelievably open. And the response you get back is not, doesn't feel very fixed. It doesn't feel very one-worded or, I don't really know what to say about that. I can't explain it. You got the community that you've created with Nick and everyone else who's participated into it.
oh, we have
It's a it is a
together.
family.
We
There
have
is a
all
family
together.
about it. Yeah, that is just kind of like, actually you can bring anything to this bond and talk about it. And there's no judgment. Like we talked about judgment, there's no criticism, there's nothing. It's just like, well, it's just exploration and just kind of like, look, check in on yourself. Like, what is going on? Is this, and I've tried to have these conversations before, and then you're like, I just feel weird. Like they don't get it and things as well. And that's absolutely fine. Growing up with certain people, or whatever it is. But then when you start to feel, you find your tribe and you find the people, you're like, oh, they get me. And oh, look, you're similar. Oh, you're similar. Oh, you're similar. Which is why, obviously, the people and the right people you get together for these things it fits together like a jigsaw puzzle. Everybody has different attributes and stuff. That has been one of the wonderful things in between the recharges. Even though it's only 4 days, the rest of the 300 and whatever 60 days that we have, there's a constant connection that I've felt. And whether it's going into this program or someone else's or whatever it is, we've carried the conversation going. And like we're doing now, we're just having this open conversation, and we'll feed off of this because we then bounce off, and it's just this has been open and free rather than that kind of closed and restricted or one word answers or small talk or something like that. I can't stand small talk, so I'm very much like, I need exploration. I need to get the deep well of it. So yeah, it's a beautiful thing, and I'm just so I'm so pleased for you as well that it is just consistently keep going on. Obviously it's upgrading. I can see it every time, and development of it and things. So yeah, it's wonderful.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. It's such a mutual creation by everyone there, I sometimes thought of it like, what's it like the X-Men? Yeah, like everyone has their superpower that they bring to the table to help all the others with. And you at the same time, we're all different, all have our different superpowers, and yet you can see yourself in every other person. It's yeah, with every person, there's always, yeah, I can relate to that.
There's a wonderful feedback loop that happens when you go around and then we start doing things and stuff as well. And then it comes back to you. I constantly felt I was, it's like different hats, different ways of feeling, especially throughout the day, where I was just like, okay, I'm in student mode. Oh no, I'm in teacher. I'm in this mode. I'm like, or father mode, or whatever it was, and consciously knowing that I'm changing throughout the day, and trying not to be that person, but knowing that it's coming up. And that kind of constant feedback loop where it's like, you're right. There'll be some times where you can be vulnerable when you're like the student or the person going through it, but then you then can quickly become the person who can help someone else. And it's just that constant like wave that I've been trying to step back and observe in myself. So I think we were talking about, if you can read the same quote over and over throughout the day, it would be a completely different feeling depending on how you're feeling. If you're feeling tired, you're going to read it in a different way. If you're feeling ecstatic, you're going to read it in a different way. And I think it's that energy as well. And especially, it says it's 4 days. It's not 4 days when you're in it. It feels like such a longer time, which is why June 2023 feels like a lifetime ago, the amount of stuff and the amount of development we've had. So
Yeah.
but yeah, I will pop up links and things as well. Also the creative recharge, whether it's for next year or just that. I imagine there's a constant link up on your website about the creative recharge anyway. And I'll pop that up in the podcast description stuff as well. And then I suppose the only thing I kind of end it with is anyone else who has got synesthesia or kind of thinking they have, do you have any advice? Obviously we've had lots of things, information in here, but any specific advice, or I don't know, anything else you'd like to share about it?
I think that, there's, I don't know. I think that the mixing panel is very handy for situations of overwhelm. I also think that, it's something that I love exchanging with people, like, learning what someone else's reality is like. I love that. And I
having conversation, I suppose. I mean, just opening up the channels just to be able to talk about it.
And I did want to ask you, like, do you experience your music visually when you play or hear it?
Not when I hear it, and not when I hear music in general, but there is when you're in songwriting mode. I mean, we can get teleported, can't we? There's this it's like a cloak that goes over, and I'm just completely, not everything goes actually. It's I've been in trouble with that before. When hyper focused, I'm like, oh, the kids are busy, and I just go and play the guitar for 5 minutes. Before I know it, I've gone 20 minutes in, and then my wife's come in going, John, they're screaming, the kids are screaming, what's going on over there is right. And I've come out of this like, what's going on? So it's different to seeing colors and things as well. But I think because of the immersion, I'm immersed into a completely another world with different colors, with different views and things as well. So I don't think it's obviously on that front, but it's a hyper focused immersion. But I don't know if that's different, but that I think we know it as musicians, whether that's a neurodivergent or it's a musician thing. But I think for a sort of deep creative mode, I feel like it's one of those immersion tanks. I literally get into there and then I'm like, I've connected to something kind of other universe. And the best time I like to do that is take myself into the woods and play guitar. So I'm surround. That's the surround sound we need. or I go to the sea, which is my my safe haven. But to answer your question, because I've gone around the houses, I'm not sure, but it'd be something actually I'd be curious to maybe observe. Maybe it's there. I just haven't properly observed it. So definitely the immersion tank.
And when I say, because when you say tree and woods, I see them, right? But do you see when I say tree? Do you see the tree?
Yeah. I see the tree, yeah, immediately. And the leaves. And then the roots. Yeah. And then the kind of little bits, it almost looks like woodpecker holes, but they're just kind of like little divots within the tree and stuff as well. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I find that inner world fascinating, because I know Jane says she doesn't have it visually, but she can hear it, and patterns and rhythms. For her, the experience is that.
Right.
But she doesn't see it. I find that so fascinating, because for me, it's like, oh, everything, because I do know that I have it quite extreme, because I have it with touch too. It's sensory in all possible ways. To touch, tastes, like words have flavors sometimes.
Right.
Yeah, it's but in its simplest form, I read this quote somewhere, like, that we all have this hallucinogenic ability that we open a collection of pieces of paper, black ink on them, and immediately we go into this hallucination.
It's kind of, isn't it like reading a book anyway? Because reading a book, you immediately get into, you know what the characters, the dream state, the things as well. But that feels very much like, you know, maybe you're unconsciously or subconsciously like tapping into that. It's then getting to a point where you're like, well, rather than it being subconscious, you can make it conscious. That I'm like, do you know what? I'm going to tap into this energy now, and now anything right here, right now, becomes a forest or wherever. And that's a very interesting thing. And I imagine that can cross over between meditation. I can imagine, because there's meditation that you tap into different energies, but you're tapping into this creative meditation where you're visualizing. And like you said, we've got that ability, but we tend to do that maybe with stories, or we tend to do that with, you know, a lot of children do that, you know, obviously my two do, and my daughter's drawings, and you know, and she's got into her own sort of little style of doing it and things as well, and you can tell she's just complete creative energy that no one is going in there going, you can't, no, hang a minute, no, you've got to go in the white lines, you've got to do the boundaries, no, it's just like, no, just let it be, or whatever it is. And I now know, as musicians, if you can get past tools, technique, theory, and things as well, there are constant things that you sharpen. You can sharpen, but they don't have to be something that you have to be like, I have to sharpen these tools for 3 years before I can go and explore. No. Just get one tool and then just try and explore from there. And particularly my lessons, music lessons, I try and do 50-50, where I'm like, look, here's a tool, go and explore with it and things. Whereas most lessons now are like books, and you've got to do this, and it's just like, let's get out the book and just try and get into the mind a bit more. But now I think, for doing it for years and years and years, I haven't tapped into technique, tools, or theory for, I don't know, 3 to 5 years. Sometimes there's been pinches of salt now and again, but it's all just been exploration. I actually go to my guitar as a therapist to go, what am I feeling? And then it reflects back on what I'm feeling. It's same with the piano, or same with our vocal, same with whatever it is. We'll be like, okay, I'm feeling this right now. What does this sound like? Or, oh, this subject here. I was writing this neurodivergent album, and I wrote each song as a trait, but built it around it. I was like, what does impulsivity sound like? And then I wrote the song out of it. And that's a really like interesting. What does anxiety sound like on guitar and things as well? Rather than it being a subject where it's taboo subject and you can't really talk about it or something, what would it sound like? And I think that's become my exploration. I love one word subjects as well. I've got a fascination with that. It's just like, okay, what does I don't know. It's all sorts of, actually, what does emotional dysregulation sound like? What does exploration sound like? And then it was being. I wrote the song Being. I was like, what does being sound like? Because I read the Ultimate Coach and all these other things. And it told me to answer these questions. I was like, I can't do it in words. So I just go and do it with music. And then this song came out. And that's where I think also we can tap into energy and visualize it that way. But able to visualize, like you said, actual things. Maybe that's another sense that I've got to become more conscious about.
However, that, what does anxiety sound like? What does, being sound like? Those are synesthetic questions. And I can't wait to hear that. I can also, that's the thing. I also I realized, I became aware that there's this constant stream going on as you speak. Everything comes to life. And impulse, did you say that was the first word? Impulse.
Impulsivity, yeah.
Yeah, impulsivity. That's a dark blue background with little white pulsating little white dots like peas in a pod, cells like moving upwards. And anxiety has a slight grain and it's kind of light blue, and it lives in the pit of the stomach in a bottle shape.
Wow.
And being is a different type of light blue. It's light blue also, and it's circular being of like a form that never ceases.
It's just fascinating, isn't it? It's, because impulsivity, and then I realized that was called rivers of gold. So the rivers of gold was this golden river that runs through the center of you. And then on the right, it was like there were red river, which was emotions, and then the green river, which was logic. But it was the middle bit, authenticity and things as well. But the impulsivity was this gold, where impulsivity can be seen as a negative thing to some people, where you're like, oh, you're so impulsive, you go and buy things, you do things off the cuff and stuff. But I'm like, well, actually, no, it has this really wonderful energy where impulsive creativity, where you're like, it just flares up and things as well. So I call it the rivers of gold. And it's same sort of thing. So there is gold, there's these colors, but I don't, and I have no idea when I go to the guitar what it's going to sound. But that's, I suppose, the beauty of having a musical instrument or some kind of medium where, same with painting or drawing, if I go to it and I focus on, well, this is the chords I'm going to use, this is the technique, I've already put red tape around it. That's so it's just, I retune my guitar to a different tuning, and then it's like, this is the blank canvas, this is a completely different canvas. And then I give it 6 months. That's because otherwise I used to restrain myself. I'm like, oh, you have to do it in this time and stuff. So I'm like, no, give it for it may not even be 6 months, maybe longer, maybe shorter. But I think that's as well, it's just the freedom to be able to go, let's just see how this goes, where it goes. And yeah, the exploration of it and things. And I think as music artists and musicians, where if you've been doing it for a while and you do get over the learning mode or whatever, that's what a lot of people get caught up in. You can see their concentration face is so serious that they're not able to sort of put things together. It's like, okay, we now need to get into emotional expression mode where you're just bopping your head and just feeling it. You've got enough things, tools and stuff as well, which is why I've started seeing the music education system and stuff where grades and stuff, it can be it can knock the sales out of that exploration. It's very formatted, it's very this, and it's just like, okay, it's not all for marks, not all for this. We need to have childlike energy. We need to be able to go, well, when I go up to a piano, like a toddler goes up to the piano and just starts smashing the thing. Doesn't matter, there's no technique or anything, but it's just simply expression and exploration. And that gets lost along the way, apart from obviously a select few of us, or however it is, who can break through that. But I'm starting to speak to a lot of musicians now. I'm like, let's tap into that. Just, it doesn't just have to be shapes and scales and tools and things as well, because we constantly can be sharpening tools. We now need to use those tools to just, be however it is and stuff. So it's interesting how the worlds that we were talking about weave together, and sort of I'm moving into another. I've just finished this album. I finished it a few months ago, but I've started exploring the next one, which is in 3 years' time. But and it's going to be called Introspection. So this one was neurodivergent. I was like, all about that. But Introspection is going to be about this, what we're talking about, the complete like immersion and using the creative recharges as and all those other experiences as like, right, I feel like I'm in this journey, but what if I just go completely all in, and but use it as a creative outlet at the same time and see what music forms out of it and stuff. So that's I think that's when you're then tapping into an energy then that is not just about music. It's just about something that is, rather than exploration of the stars and space, you're just doing it internally. So it's a wonderful thing. So I've gone into completely different energies and stuff there, but I think that's what the wonderful thing of speaking from two musicians who very exploration, very different way. Like I have a completely different approach to my songwriting and music now, the way obviously I did 5-10 years ago, which was very formatted. And I'm grateful for that, because if I carried on that journey, I reckon it would have fallen off a cliff, because it's too formatted, too black and white, too music industry, mainstream, whatever it is, where you're writing for the trends and you're writing for the metrics, and that's machine to me. I need to be writing from the John Hart, not the John Head sort of thing. So but yeah, this has been absolutely wonderful. I knew it was going to be wonderful anyway, to tap into, and I know I could keep talking for hours and hours and hours, but thank you so much, Bloom, for coming on. And like I said, I will pop up your link in the description anyway. This is evergreen, so it will be up. So new album, and obviously creative recharges, everything else that you've got going on in your wonderful world. And yeah, we'll speak soon.
Thank you so much for having me. I have really enjoyed this conversation.
Hey, thank you so much for tuning in. If you want to hear more episodes, head to your favorite podcast app or platform and search for The Neurodivergent Musician. There are lots of solo and guest episodes to dive in with insights, improvised babble, and recommendations. I also encourage you to go and check out my new album, Neurodivergent, which is how I process my whole experience from unaware to aware, from undiagnosed to diagnosed, and more through music. And finally, if you are a neurodivergent musician and looking for a community where you can unmask and be you, please do come and join in. We deliver free workshops with Q&As and more. All links are in the podcast description, or you can find out more info at johnhartmusic.com or theneurodivergentmusician.co.uk. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode. Cheers. Take care.